Hello, thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Neeta and I will be your host for the session since Antonio is unwell. Uh, Here is the quick agenda for today's session. Pragnesh will cover it a little bit more in detail after the introductions. For those of you who have not heard of SkillNet or not aware, I thought I would provide a brief introduction of the work that we do. Since 1996, we have been providing consulting and technology services to manufacturing, CPG, and multi-level marketing companies. Over the years, we have worked across 53 countries and partnered with global brands to ensure rich customer experiences. One of the reasons for our success has been our partnership with leaders such as SAP in the area of business commerce. As you can see, our areas of focus not only cover the retail space, but also, companies in the B2B space. Going forward, what I'd now like to do is introduce the speakers for today's session. I would like to welcome Pat Sampson from SAP, who's the Director of Go-to-Market for SAP Commerce. Joining us is also Pragnesh Ray, who's the Director of eCommerce Consulting Services. And I look forward to hearing from both Pat and Pragnesh, and I'm sure it's going to be a very interesting and informative session.
So Neeta, I'll go through the agenda. So let me walk through this items that we have, topics that we have. So we'll start with discussing headless e-commerce as a design pattern, the theory aspect, its benefits and differences over monolithic architecture. I'll hand over to Pat after that, and he will present SAP's strategy for e-commerce and their roadmap. Then we'll talk about headless e-commerce in real life. What features, capabilities are there for SAP Commerce Cloud platform to support headless e-commerce. And then we'll talk about how SkillNet can help you get there. What is the recommended path to headless e-commerce in the context of SAP Commerce Cloud? After that, we'll briefly touch on key features of Spartacus and its benefits. After that, we'll do a demo for SAP Commerce Cloud with Spartacus B2B client. And we'll showcase, how SAP supports, the Commerce Cloud platform supports omnichannel touchpoints for mobile and point of sale system. And finally, we'll put up a SkillNet offer to help you get an estimate for SAP Commerce Cloud migration. So let's move on. So let's start with the theory. Headless e-commerce concept. What is we've heard the word headless e-commerce. What does it mean? So the definition of that is headless e-commerce is a design pattern that basically describes the decoupling of the front end of your e-commerce experience from the back end. This unchained logic allows for more architecture flexibility, so it is easier for you to design a system you want. You can replace the word unchained with decoupled system. The key point here is the backend server systems are the source of truth for data. So there is one system. In our case, it would be SAP Commerce Cloud. Would be the system of truth. All touch points would connect to it, and for example, pricing, product, inventory, and so on. The diagram on the right shows you various touch points, headless e-commerce API layer, which would be in our case could be SAP Commerce Cloud. And besides it, you have a normal monolithic e-commerce high-level architecture where you have page templates, views, a controller logic, and a database. Let's move on to the next slide. So here we'll talk about, what are the major differences between monolithic e-commerce architecture and a headless e-commerce architecture. So there are some technical aspects and business aspects to it. With monolithic e-commerce architecture, you have low converting user experience, can be hard to make design changes, unresponsive, slower feature testing and rollout, slower page load times, tightly coupled front end and back end. With headless e-commerce, high converting user experience, easily brandable, responsive to new channels, faster feature testing and rollout, faster page load times. Now, typically, with a traditional e-commerce platform, you might, that might get you up running quickly, ready-made templates. But the visual themes available are little cookie cutter or restricting. You can quickly create a store and get global promotions live instantly, but you may sacrifice on the brand look and feel you want in the process. So when your store is built as a progressive web app, heavy backend functions are kept entirely separate from the customer experience. With headless e-commerce and Spartacus, you get progressive web application. Okay. So with this introduction, of what is headless e-commerce at a high level, the design pattern, key benefits, differences, I'll pass it to Pat for outlining, SAP's e-commerce strategy and roadmap. Pat.
Thanks. Yeah, so I'm going to dig into the strategy from a product perspective as to where SAP is going with the Commerce Cloud product. And we'll also talk about, commerce on-prem and commerce and SAP infrastructure as part of that. Before I get into that, I just want to just quickly address the disclaimer. Anything that I talk about as being roadmap or, things that are slated for delivery, that it is simply our intent, obviously, to deliver these things based on market conditions, our development, resource availability. Things can shift around in the roadmap. So don't take dates as hard set dates. It's simply what we intend to deliver. Okay. So let's start out with the strategic direction. So with the Commerce Cloud product, there's three main legs that the commerce stool sits on, right? So the first is Commerce Everywhere. Commerce Everywhere is exactly this headless topic we're talking about. Getting our customers to take in, move away from either the legacy JSP-based Accelerator storefront provided by Hybris, SAP Commerce, or a third party, and moving to a progressive web app, based on Spartacus that is our current investment direction and product recommendation, right? So Commerce Everywhere is a big piece of it. Composable commerce is the other leg. So with composable commerce, we're talking about microservices. For customers who are running in Commerce Cloud and public cloud infrastructure, we are delivering within our roadmap a set of microservices that are going to be part of the Commerce Cloud subscription. So the first of those is going to be a search microservice, followed by a payment microservice, and then there's multiple other microservices we're going to be delivering down the line. So those essentially line up with our stated direction to decompose the monolithic architecture of the legacy commerce on-premise product. So microservices are a big piece of it. It also includes the ability for our customers to take the customizations they've built on the Commerce Core itself. So the Java Spring extension approach that we historically used to customize commerce, we've delivered an alternate mechanism for delivering customizations, and that's based off of Kima Runtime, which is essentially a microservices platform for you to develop your own microservices and then tie those into the Commerce Core. So that's another piece. The third leg of the stool is essentially the intelligence. So leveraging AI, ML-based features to deliver a better user experience, to drive higher conversion rates. And that technology behind that is context-driven services, which is our, the first of the microservices we delivered almost 2 years ago to deliver contextual personalization within the commerce UI itself. So that's at a high level is where we're investing our money from a development and feature perspective within the Commerce Cloud product. When we go through and look at the way the stacks line up, it essentially appears like this as we're talking about today. Spartacus is running the front end, basically the customer interaction or running the glass, right? So Headless storefront is going to give you a lot more flexibility and developing your storefront separate from your back office so that you can move at a quicker pace in terms of delivering features to your end consumers. The core services I've already mentioned are the microservices that are being built off of the Commerce Core. Those are exclusive to Commerce Cloud customers. They would not be available to, on-premise customers or commerce customers who run an SAP infrastructure. Context-driven services is the dynamic personalization UI I just mentioned about. AI, ML technologies to take in, do things like provide, carousels, of what's the next recommended product to purchase, being able to do A/B testing, those types of features. So that's all part of the context-driven services solution. The immediate benefit customers get from moving to Commerce Cloud is essentially the Commerce Cloud automation engine or the platform as a service, as well as the integration package. So customers who move to Commerce Cloud are able to take and leverage self-service tooling for doing builds, deployments, as well as a host of other features that I'll get into here in a few minutes. So that is actually a monthly or every other month release cycle. We're delivering new features on the automation engine. Quarterly, we're delivering new features on the integration packages. So, the Commerce Cloud product is standardized on using SAP Cloud Platform integration for our integration technology. And essentially any new integration being delivered over the last year and a half and moving into the future will be delivered as an integration package based on SCPI. So the legacy Hybris Data Hub, although it hasn't been end of life, we ceased delivering new integration packages for that product. So it is essentially in maintenance mode as it sits today. All right. So, I mentioned that some of the priorities around Headless, core services, integrations, all of these things we're focusing on with the Commerce Cloud product is for two reasons. And the two reasons are these two bottom center and bottom right points that we're making here, right? So to make it easier for customers to consume upgrades, because as we take and we move customizations off the Commerce Core, as we break the dependency of the JSP storefronts on the back office by putting a progressive web app there, we're making it much easier for customers to consume upgrades, deliver new functionality without having to do full regression testing. So the intent is to deliver although not a SaaS platform, deliver a more SaaS-like platform by delivering this platform as a service. And that dovetails into this last point on the bottom right, which is, that the automation engine is allowing for faster go lives, allowing you to take and migrate more easily from on-prem or commerce in SAP infrastructure into Commerce Cloud, and ultimately start to realize the value that you can really achieve by having an agile platform to develop on. Okay. So some of the details of the immediate benefits to moving to Commerce Cloud, right? So the initial benefit you're going to see is decreased development times. Even if you just do a simple lift and shift of your existing commerce solution from Commerce Cloud on SAP infrastructure or for on-premise and put it into Commerce Cloud on public cloud infrastructure, you're going to be able to take and leverage self-service tools, as I've already mentioned, to do builds, deployments. We take and provide the auto scaling there. So as long as you're within your license metric for the solution, we will make your infrastructure as big as it needs to be in order to accommodate peaks in your traffic in order to meet the SLA. So the auto scaling is a big piece of what we're delivering. Disaster recovery with, for the premium disaster recovery, it's up to a 4-hour recovery time. So, it is a complete solution. Being able to take and deliver things like application monitoring, just core application monitoring using Dynatrace, as well as infrastructure monitoring, but also optionally via the SAP store, you could purchase the digital experience monitoring, which is the equivalent of the Dynatrace RUM product. So you could actually tie in your front end experience to the product or the application monitoring and get a full picture front to back in terms of what's going on. The other benefit of this is global availability. For anybody that's running global implementations, you can take and run a single code line in data centers on pretty much every major continent in the world, just leveraging Commerce Cloud, because we're obviously leveraging Azure data center. So even if you wanted to run in China, you could run a separate China subscription that would be compliant with the Chinese regulations for operating in China. So all of this together delivers an immediate benefit in terms of more flexibility, quicker time to value, and drastically reduced operational costs as you go forward. Once you're there in Commerce Cloud and public cloud infrastructures, that's when you can go through and start leveraging technologies like Spartacus for the headless storefront, the core services, start peeling some of your customizations off, putting them on Kima runtime to even further accelerate your ability to innovate and achieve higher revenue. So the platform itself, I already mentioned some of these things like the Dynatrace monitoring, the build and deploy process, basically self-service management in your environment. A lot of these features are also available via API, so that if you did have your own, Jenkins server, for example, that's deploying other components around your overall commerce solution, your Jenkins server could also trigger a build of the Commerce Cloud platform and deployment without actually having to log into the cloud portal to do it yourself in the self-service mode. So the APIs are there to do things like that. You can also do a lot of stuff that via self-service that typically would be kind of resource intensive in terms of configuring VPN connections, IP whitelisting, managing all your certificates. We're providing UIs for you to take and manage all that within the cloud portal, which is the user tooling on the automation engine. So you're able to take and do much of this stuff all yourself without having to take and call SAP to do it, call your partner to do it. It truly is a beneficial platform for everybody to develop on. So you can really just focus on your front end user experience development, your feature development on the Commerce Core itself, instead of worrying about all the other pieces that sit around it. So that was what I had to deliver on the strategy and roadmap. So I'll pass it back.
Hey, thanks, Pat. So that was very useful. We got an overview of SAP strategy and roadmap. He discussed some benefits of SAP's cloud platform. So now let's look at what real-world key features are available on SAP Commerce Cloud to support headless e-commerce. So and after that, we'll also talk about how SkillNet can help you through your headless e-commerce journey. So we'll start with the SAP Commerce Cloud architecture. This is high-level architecture. We saw a different version of that in Pat's slide, but I'm going to highlight some of the components here in the context of headless e-commerce. So major components, first is the platform itself, the core commerce platform, and with OCC API. The second one I would highlight is the infrastructure support, where you get support for DevOps, monitoring support provided by Azure Cloud. Also, SAP Cloud Platform integration. For external integrations, be it third-party, on-premise, on-cloud, or other SAP ERP, ECC systems. And Schema runtime, support for serverless Lambda functions, structured approach to implementing complex functionality in association with existing data model, essentially creating new extensions, microservices over code customization. And finally, the main Spartacus storefront. Decoupled front-end client, ready-made, I would say. So, three major features I consider are very important in real life for implementing headless e-commerce. So Spartacus front-end client, OCC API, and the support that Spartacus client provides for CMS and SmartEdit. So we'll touch on each of those very briefly in the next slide. So here is the client itself. This is based on Angular JavaScript. Minimal disruption to UI experience when transitioning from Accelerator-based storefront. I'll showcase you during our demo Spartacus storefront, B2B storefront, and it feels very similar to what you are used to with template-based Accelerator storefront. Completely decoupled, provides CMS support, and you don't have to develop this from scratch. And we'll cover some of the benefits and features of Spartacus later in the session. Okay, so the other thing I want to highlight is OCC API layer. Now, this is, of course, available out of the box since what we used to call Hybris. On the left-hand side of your screen, we have a image from Swagger, and basically what this showcases is all the data objects that are available out of the box through OCC API. You don't need to develop this from scratch. All the major data models like customer cart, order, address, catalog, promotions, a lot more, are available out of the box. The API is protected by inbuilt security mechanism by OAuth. And finally, the support for SmartEdit and CMS system. So most of you, I assume, are familiar with SmartEdit. It's a WYSIWYG editing tool. Spartacus support for CMS and SmartEdit is a very big plus. One, we do not need to reinvent the wheel over here. You cannot have a practical storefront without using CMS system. And as you can see on the right-hand side of your screen, steps for making SmartEdit work with Spartacus is simply configuration. Very basic steps to enable that. Okay, we have a brief poll. Neeta, do you want to conduct that? You're on mute, Neeta.
Sure, Pragnesh, we can. I'll start the poll right now. So what we are looking for is an understanding of where you are in the headless e-commerce journey. So I will just initiate the poll, and if you could just select the option, we will have about 30 seconds, and I will announce the results of the poll after 30 seconds. So thank you for taking time to do this. I hope you all can see the poll. I can see people are slowly responding. We have another 15 seconds to go. I think, yeah, some more results coming in. All right, we have another 5 seconds to go. So we've finally gotten the results. So we have about 14% of our audience is already implementing headless e-commerce. Another 14% is in the design and analysis state. Interestingly enough, 35% of our audience are looking at headless e-commerce in a 6-month time period. And another 28% is looking at it at a 12-month horizon. So just to sum up, looks like a majority of our audience is still considering it, and they're looking at it between the 6 to 12-month horizon. Thank you so much for taking part in the poll. And Pragnesh, handing it back to you to take the session forward.
Hey, thank you. So let's look at the next topic, which is enabling headless e-commerce. So how can SkillNet help you in your journey towards headless e-commerce? We'll talk about that. Let's look at what are the steps to migrate to or enable headless e-commerce at a very high level. So if you are a customer with SAP Commerce on-premise, the first bubble on the left-hand side, then the step for you is step 1, which is to upgrade to latest supported version. Right now it is 1905 is recommended or higher. So first upgrade, and then migrate to Commerce Cloud, and then migrate to Spartacus. And if you are on any other e-commerce system, not SAP, then implement SAP Commerce Cloud and then migrate to Spartacus, meaning these are 2 steps that SkillNet recommends. Technically, I would say, it is not necessary, but highly recommended that you migrate or put your system on SAP Commerce Cloud before trying to implement Spartacus. There are many benefits of moving to SAP Commerce Cloud. I think a few Pat touched on it today. We have done a full webinar on migration to SAP Commerce Cloud previously. So if you missed it, I would suggest you can go to SkillNet website to view it. I will cover briefly, not in full detail, the process of migrating, upgrade and migrating to SAP Commerce Cloud. And then in step 2, which is to migrate from Accelerator-based storefront to Spartacus-based headless e-commerce storefront. So this is a high-level, approach to, migrating to SAP Commerce Cloud from on-premise or, cloud-based, the SAP Commerce or Hybris. So it is, as mentioned, it is recommended that you start your migration to Spartacus storefront after upgrading to SAP Commerce 1905 or later. The way OmniCommerce Connect OCC application, APIs are installed has been simplified. They are now available as extensions instead of add-ons. As you can see in this diagram, this is a waterfall approach to migration. Since we know the end state of the system, it's your current website, we want to migrate to SAP Commerce Cloud. We recommend minimizing adding new features during the migration, essentially to reduce the risk and keep the focus on migration. There are 3 parties involved in this process. let's I'll briefly touch on each of those roles. So SAP during the analyze and design phase would probably would be environmental setup and commercials. During development phase, they would be involved in media and data migration to your dev staging environment. They also perform a cloud readiness check as a gate check to ensure that your analysis and design is done appropriately. During the testing phase, they would SAP would be involved in doing a cloud readiness check 2, milestone check 2, gate 2. And during deployment stage, they would migrate your data and media into production environment. SkillNet would be involved in, initially during analysis and design phase, would be involved in upgrade assessment, migration assessment, commercials. During development and testing, it is standard project management, code adaptations, environment setups, performance benchmark. And during deployment, it's essentially lift and shift your code, build and deploy. There is a role customer plays during all these phases, which is to, during analysis and design, it's, understanding the contract and so on. Development and test phase, smoke testing, handling dependent system integrations, data cleanup is an important activity. And during testing, it is user acceptance testing. And finally, during deploy, it is, again, smoke testing and so on. So let's cover slightly in detail what kind of activities SkillNet would perform during analyze and design phase. I won't go into too much detail on these activities. This is to provide you an overview. So for example, we will do data model analysis. We need to understand the current data model, what are the customizations, and determine how the model will be represented in cloud environment. Essentially look for non-standard structures. We would we'll do source code analysis. We use automated tools, do manual analysis to ensure code is following best practices, fix where necessary, code adaptation. Integration overview, how the integration will function once the platform moves to cloud, security of connections, protocols and so on. Automated test plan, it's very important. Site would probably need full regression testing when you migrate. And then, supporting SAP for the CRC check. So the next phase would be development and testing. So these are typical activities SkillNet would perform during development and testing phase. For example, I would say security analysis. So we'll look at, ensure core backend URLs are properly protected, no defaults, URL whitelisting, access permissions, etc. We'll do code fixes, adaptation where necessary. We'll do testing, demos, data maintenance, cleanup, profiling, and then finally supporting SAP for cloud readiness check 2. And then we have, the final phase, which is the deploy phase, where SkillNet will prepare a cutover plan, promotion setup, performance testing, work with SAP professional services for data and media migration, and post-deployment, hypercare, monitoring, and so on. So at the end of this, the system has been migrated to SAP Commerce Cloud. We conclude the step 1 of our journey towards headless e-commerce implementation, I would say. Once the site is stable, we suggest that we take up step 2, migration to Spartacus storefront. So this is a high-level architecture diagram, that showcases the differences between Accelerator-based storefront and Spartacus-based storefront. So as you can see, the before and after, since we are trying to migrate from Accelerator-based storefront to Spartacus. User state is managed at the client side in Spartacus. Local storage OAuth token for Spartacus. And interactions are from JavaScript client is directly with OCC API, REST API call, not with the controller. So that is the major difference from an architecture perspective. So how do we get there? Steps to migrate to Spartacus. So this is of course a very simplified view, but first step is make an inventory of CMS components and pages. So for each page, you would list the controller and custom CMS components that are used. And for each component, figure out which data it needs to display or process. Out of the box, Spartacus supports almost all responsive B2C CMS components. So you will need only need to focus on your custom components, as well as those coming from third-party add-ons or marketplace extensions not covered in the standard library. Group and classify them according to a functional area using a component inventory. It could be a spreadsheet. Be aware that unlike the Accelerator page approach, everything needs to be a component in Spartacus. So you might need to create components from existing JSP layout. Step 2, perform a gap analysis with controllers and identify missing OCC API. Identify that there is a corresponding OCC API that provides the data needed. Otherwise, describe the OCC extension that will be needed. Step 3, once that is done, implement the missing OCC API. And step 4, implement the CMS pages and component. Okay, so at the end of that, so step 1 and step 2, we migrated to SAP Commerce Cloud, and these are the steps to migrate to Spartacus. We went through that. Now we have again another brief poll. Nita, you want to take that?
Sure, Pragnesh. Thanks. So I guess, while we have a lot of you who are already on your journey to headless e-commerce, you would have faced some challenges in the past. And obviously, we had a majority of the audience who are still considering a move to headless e-commerce. So if you could let us know what are the major challenges that you face, that would be awesome. I have just published the poll. Again, we have about 30 seconds. If you could please take the time to respond to the poll, we'd really appreciate it. Thank you. I can see the results coming in, so thank you for that. We have another 10 seconds for the poll. All right, I think it's about 30 seconds, and it's really interesting that I think, there's a split between technology and timeline, which has been viewed as the major challenge. So we had about 40%, 38% of the respondents saying that technology was one of the major challenges, and the timeline was 30%. Interestingly enough, the third one was the budget, and the last one was the trained resources, both of which, budgets were about 16%, while trained resources were about 13%. So that's the result of the poll that we have. Thank you again. And Pragnish, over to you to continue the session.
Thanks, Neeta. So the poll says technology and timeline. I would highly recommend our audience to hang around, and I'll showcase how easy it is to implement headless e-commerce during our demo, and I think that may convince them otherwise. So we covered how SkillNet can help you in your journey towards headless e-commerce. We will touch very briefly on Spartacus, front-end client, its features and benefits before we go into demoing, how Spartacus client works and this, other touch points. So again, let's recap briefly. Spartacus, it's a JavaScript storefront built with Angular JavaScript, connected to SAP Commerce Cloud with OCC API, supports SmartEdit CMS, can be easily upgraded, is easily branded. You can create your own styling, and is compliant with progressive web apps. Benefits. This is very self-explanatory slide. I think we have covered this. Pat covered it. We have discussed this before. The only thing I would highlight over here is it's a progressive web app. I think that's a very important feature. Easy upgrades, schematic support. It's extensible, configurable, faster development cycles. So these are very important benefits. Support CMS. Let's look at some of the out-of-the-box features from Spartacus, which I think are very important. So this is in contrast to somebody developing their own, JavaScript client. If you use Spartacus, you get out-of-the-box localization, SEO support. A lot of the features in terms of B2C core, homepage, product detail, and etc. are common, but I would highlight consignment tracking, back in stock notification. It also supports B2B out of the box, So B2B checkout, not just using your credit card as a payment, but purchase order, ability to define and support, essentially support B2B commerce organization, and subscription, B2B scheduled replenishment. Yeah, so let's get into Omnichannel Demo. So let me outline the use case over here before I showcase the demo. Sorry, guys, I have a bad throat. So this is the scenario that we are going to outline. Customer places an order in Spartacus storefront. So what we see over here in the slide is SAP Commerce Cloud in the center, and we have a Spartacus e-commerce storefront connecting through OCC API. And let me see if I can start switching my screens. So SAP Commerce Cloud is the system or source of truth for pretty much everything: product, customer, orders, inventory, and so on. So give me a second while I share my screen. Okay. So what you see over here is a familiar B2B Power Tools site, but this is a Spartacus storefront. what I'm going to do on this is simply do a checkout, place an order. So let's go through that. We'll purchase, let's say, a couple of items. Add to cart. Add to cart. Okay. So we added 3 carts. You realize I have already logged in, meaning it's a B2B site. It requires login. So we have 3 items in the cart. We'll proceed to checkout. You can see this is out of box. We haven't done anything to this storefront. So out of the box, it supports PO, credit card. So we'll just use credit card for now. We already have an address in the system. Just as zooming through, and I placed an order through Spartacus storefront. Did you guys see me placing an order, going through that steps?
Yeah, I think we saw that you had 3 items in your cart.
Okay. So I think in the interest of time, I'm not going to repeat that. But I went through the steps of a standard checkout and placed an order. So we have the order number over here, and we will just let's remember this order number. We'll use this order number in our other touch points. So let me stop sharing over here. And okay, so we are back to our slides. So we placed an order through Spartacus storefront. Now let's add another touch point to this process. So what we are going to do over here is we'll have the customer review the order on a mobile app, Android simulator. The same order that we placed just now, 4004 order number. So this simulator is built using React Native. And what we would simulate is, log into my account, order history, and order detail. And let me share my screen. Okay, so as you can see, this is Android simulator, and we will connect to SAP Commerce Cloud using OCC API. Let me log in over here. Demo at SkillNetInc.com in a password. And there we have it. So this is the order number we just placed. So these are the orders we had placed previously, but this is the current order we placed just now, 4004. So if I click on it, we should see our 3 items that we put in the cart. So we have network installer toolkit, and we have 3 items and 577 total. Yes, so we are reviewing the same order through another touch point, a mobile app, and using OCC API. Let me stop sharing my screen. Okay. So as you can see in the slide, we added another touch point. And now to complete the scenario, let's add another touch point from a user journey perspective. Let's say the customer returns a line item, from that 3 things that we had purchased at a physical store, So what we are going to show is application enablement in point of sale system, simulating order search from a point of sale system. Typically for point of sale systems, they have an embedded browser. And what I would showcase is how you can search for that same order from point of sale system. So let me see. So what you see over here is a typical register screen, main screen, return screen. These are just snapshots. And order search through an embedded browser. So I'm going to show you this, how easy it is to connect to OCC API and do this. Let's see. I'll share my screen again. Okay, so I assume you can see this. So we had placed order number 4004. There we go. So to simplify things, we'll search with the order ID. And this is imagine this is a simulator for a browser window that is typically there in a most modern point of sale registers. There we have it, our 3 items that we purchased in that order. And what we would do at that point on the register is select the item and OK, and this order and the item detail would be passed on to the registered window. So it would look something like this, So the item we selected would be, brought in the information, and the user would process, the written process of tender screen, void the item, and transaction complete, print receipt, and so on. So, let's recap, what we did over here. This is what we demonstrated over here is would probably cover 95% of scenario. From an interaction perspective, we did touch on 3 major touch points: desktop, mobile, and point of sale system. Placed an order on desktop, review the order via my account on mobile application, and return an item in store at point of sale system. The sequence of customer journey could be different, and it will not impact the solution. This is the core benefit of headless e-commerce. All this is possible due to SAP Commerce Cloud being the source of truth and connecting via OCC API. If your organization is not where we showcased and you would like to explore more, here is the SkillNet offer for that. Let me bring it up. So at SkillNet, we are offering, a 2-week free high-level impact analysis and estimation assessment offer. If you intend to migrate to SAP Commerce Cloud, we can do this assessment and provide you an estimate free of charge. The offer is limited to 3 customers. And if you need more information on that, you can contact Paul, and here is his email. Neeta, do you want to add anything over here?
Sure. We've also published the offer online, so people can register for it, and we can reach out to them once we get their details, or they could call Paul. Either one works.
Okay. So I would, while you have published the offer online, I would recap, in summary. So what we have done is we have gone through headless e-commerce as a design pattern, the theory. We have discussed SAP's strategy and the roadmap in the context of headless e-commerce. We saw our, discuss some of the features that SAP Commerce Cloud provides for headless e-commerce, Spartacus OCC API, CMS support for Spartacus. We also discussed in detail, how SkillNet can help you in your headless e-commerce journey. Step 1, Step 2. Step 1, migrate to SAP Commerce Cloud. Step 2, migrate to Spartacus. We discussed briefly, out-of-the-box benefits of Spartacus, and finally, a full demo to showcase the two things that were, highlighted in the poll, technology and timeline. Meaning this was, it's technology is there. We can show you working. The timeline is, it doesn't take a long because we could, do it and come up with this solution for this webinar. It didn't take us much time. I think we are running out of time, but if there are any questions, we can take in few questions at this time.
Thanks, Pragnish. That was a really informative session. We do have a few questions from the audience. What I'm going to do is, we probably have 2 minutes left, so probably I'll just cover one question, and then we can reach out to the folks who have asked us and individually respond to their queries. So I think one of the questions that we've been asked is it necessary to move to SAP Commerce Cloud to use Spartacus?
I think I briefly touched on that, but no, it is not necessary, meaning it is recommended, to migrate to SAP Commerce Cloud, because we know that SAP support for on-premise hybrids, is sunsetting eventually. And it is recommended that you migrate over there first and then move to Spartacus. It is not, it is recommended, I would say, yes.
Yeah, it's not required, as it's an open source project. As long as you have the OCC APIs, which would still mean you should be on a newer version of Commerce on-prem, you can use Spartacus.
Thank you so much, Pat and Pragnish. I'm sure the audience will have lots of questions. Like I said, we do have a few more questions, but given the interest of time, we will reach out to folks individually. Thank you again for joining the session, and we look forward to seeing you at other webinars, in future. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.